Some questions. Okay. So can you briefly tell me about your experience as a student of color at University of Maryland?
This is actually my third year at the University of Maryland because I transferred from another PWI, and I can actually say that my experiences from both universities have been a lot different. I would say here, although we do have a really big white population, I feel like there was more support for minorities here. There's so many minority groups on campus, and it gives me, a space where I can kind of talk about different issues that we are all facing as minorities on campus. So I would say overall, my experience has been good, but on top of that, I can say that from being at Maryland and from being surrounded by so many people from different backgrounds, I have noticed a lot of racism on campus, like even in some of my classes. And I've heard from other people different instances of racism. So I think that although there is support, there's definitely a racial tension on campus.
Okay, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about your position on the e-board of Community Roots, and then tell me what the organization is what the purpose of the organization is?
So I am co-president of Community Roots, and Community Roots is a multicultural advocacy organization, and our goal is to unite all different cultures to talk about one social issue and be one voice for change.
And why was it important for you to be a part of this organization?
So 2 years ago, or I guess a year and a half ago, I actually covered a story about Community Roots when I was a student reporter, and I went to a general body meeting about I think it was either police brutality or racial profiling. And from that meeting, I realized a lot more about racial profiling than I knew before. But I think overall, I realized that other students were talking about it, and it was something that was being discussed, and it was a space where I felt safe discussing social issues like that. So I think that having a safe area where I could discuss these issues is what drew me into Community Roots.
Okay. Do you think your university is where it needs to be in terms of cultural inclusion? And if not, how do you think it could be improved?
So that's a really interesting question because I actually just got selected to join our president's student advisory board on diversity and inclusion. And this group, unfortunately, was just created this year or this semester. So beforehand, our president obviously noticed that a student advisory board needed to be created because although Maryland is very diverse, it's not very inclusive. So this board is, its purpose is to create a more inclusive area for students. So I don't want to give away too much of what we talked about in the meeting, but we did talk about different ways in which organizations on campus can collaborate more. So for example, African Student Association collaborating with Asian American Student Association is something that doesn't really happen on campus. So we talked about different ways of doing that. And then we also talked about informing freshmen on campus about cultural competency so they can carry on those ideals throughout college.
Okay. And my last question is, do you think you faced any challenges here at the University of Maryland that has been directly linked to you being a student of color? And if so, could you share one of those challenges?
I think that, I don't know if I would say that this is a challenge, but I think that overall, just making sure that my voice is heard as a minority. A lot of my classes have minorities in my classes, and I think in those classes, I feel comfortable talking about different issues on campus, but when I am in classes that don't have a lot of minorities, it's very hard to stick out in your class and be heard because a lot of people don't really value your opinion as much. So I think that that's really been the biggest issue when you're kind of put into those spaces opposed to others.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Sierra.
Okay.
That wasn't that bad.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm the faculty advisor for Community Roots.
Okay. And how long have you been at University of Maryland?
I think I'm working on a gold watch because I went here as an undergraduate, did a lot of my graduate studies here, and now I teach here. So I'd say in total it's probably about 20 years.
Okay, good. Can you briefly tell me why it was important for you to be a part of Community Roots?
Well, I like the mission and I like what it is they're doing, and some of my, best and favorite students are involved in it. And I think that they really take education really seriously, and inclusion and multiculturalism. And those are things that I'm about, and in the department that I represent, African American Studies here at the University of Maryland. That's what we're about. So, the opportunity to collaborate with them, to, be a sounding board for their ideas, I looked at it as an honor and a great opportunity.
Could you describe the strength of the administrative advocacy for minority organizations such as Community Roots? Do you think it's where it needs to be, or do you think it's headed in the right direction?
I can't really speak on, I don't know that I feel comfortable speaking on that, only because I don't know what the other organizations are doing. I don't know exactly how the faculty supports them. I can tell you what students have told me, and that's that they don't always feel supported by faculty and administration. But, there are outlets there like MICA and other, campus-related organizations that, provide funding and provide different things for organizations. So I think it's a mixed bag.
Okay. Do you think the University of Maryland is where it needs to be in terms of diversity and cultural inclusion? And if not, how do you think it could be improved?
Well, I think diversity and cultural inclusion are two different things. I think diversity, in my opinion, is kind of an empty word. Mm-hmm. It's sometimes putting people into a classroom or into a building and thinking that they're going to learn from one another. I think one of the things that I think needs to improve, we don't have a lot of class diversity. Sometimes I'll be in classrooms and I'll have a lot of racial and ethnic diversity, which is really interesting. But, when I ask where are people from, what are what kind of background they have, a lot of them are very similar, and that's black and white and, other people of color. So I think that could be improved upon. I think there needs to be more, opportunities for funding and scholarships for people who are not as well off as others. As far as cultural inclusion, it could always be better. This is, like you said, a predominantly white institution, and it has a history of segregation. We are in the South, so of course it could definitely improve. But do I think that there have been strides made since I started out here? Absolutely.
Okay. Why do you think it's important for students of all backgrounds to be a part of Community Roots?
I think you bring many different perspectives, many different issues. I think one of the last GBMs that I went to dealt with homophobia, and you saw different people who were bringing different perspectives, different gender identities, things that perhaps we might not be exposed to in your dorm room or in your classroom, or someone might not want to speak up. And as Sierra said, this is a safe space for all of that. So I think, the more difference, the better.
My last question is, as a member of the faculty and a former student of the University of Maryland, what do you think are some benefits for students of color to attend PWIs?
I think the multiculturalism is a big benefit. That's not to say you won't get that at an HBCU, but I think it is great to be able to, go to a meeting with the Filipino Student Association and learn about those cultures, and interact with faculty of many different backgrounds. So I think that that is a big plus.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
All right, no problem.
Quick and painless, right?
My name is Eric Darnell, ERIC, DARNELO.
Okay, can you briefly tell me about the organization you're a part of, and your position in the organization?
Okay. So I am the co-chair of the Black Heritage Celebration Committee, which is a committee inside of the George Washington University's Black Student Union. We're a committee made of about 9 to 10 of us, and we are in charge of planning Black History Month, the official celebration of GW's Black History Month at the university. We're one of the larger cultural celebrations here at GW. We have one for all different types of marginalized groups. So we have a Women's Month, we have a Latino Heritage Month, we have the South Asian, and then we do African American.
Okay. Can you briefly tell me about your experience as a student of color at a predominantly white institution?
In the classroom, academically,
Any
any
Just
type
describe
of
a specific experience if
specific
you like,
experience.
in general, anything.
I would say my experience as a black male at GW could probably be summed up in a freshman communication class I took. It was interpersonal communication, and there was a section on intercultural communication.
Mm-hmm.
And a young Caucasian lady was speaking on how different minorities interact and so like that and speak and just, about vernacular and things like that, which is, everything was fine, everything was cool. And then she started talking about how in her public school, how the black kids would like talk a certain way and stuff like that and how they were from the hood. And then she turned to me and said, Eric can probably speak to it being that he's from like more of that environment.
Wow.
So I would probably say that's like a good summary.
Uh-huh.
And she said like with this smiling face, and the worst part was like nobody in the classroom was even fazed by it except for me and the other black girl that was in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
The teacher probably thought I got a little fazed by it, but thought the best way was just to like keep on moving on rather than actually deading it and like just stopping it right there. But I say that story just to, I think that exemplifies that I think at this school there's a lot of white privilege, and a lot of kids have never been around black people. The only black people they might have come from their privileged backgrounds are, quite honestly, the help, like they're made like a school teacher, so they really don't have, or media images. So if you're not Beyonce or you're not their caretaker from when they were like 5 years old, they probably haven't talked to a black person before. Or if they're from a boarding school, they might have had a black person in their class for like 8 years, but that's the only black person that's been around white people for 8 years. So.
Okay. Have you faced any challenges as a student on your own personal accord, as an organization? I know you guys were just speaking about some of the challenges. So could you just go into, one or general, like the challenges you feel you face being at GW?
A challenge I definitely face as a black male at GW is making sure that I'm being taken seriously in a professional or academics place. What I've realized is that even doesn't matter like what your grades are or how you talk and how professional you are. If you look a certain way, you're automatically going to have to fight certain stereotypes that are already in people's minds as soon as you walk in the room. I do think, however, that my agency as a male has made it easier than my black female counterparts, who I think get like a lot more flack than the males do. But I will say it definitely is isolating as a black male too, because black male rates at PWIs like GW are very low in consideration to black females. As an organization and organization-wise, I think, like we discussed earlier, a really big problem is in terms of fairness, in terms of like with funding, not only from our Student Government Association, but from the way that we're treated or even viewed by the administration, who sometimes might have good intentions, but they're just so off-kilter and don't even really talk to the people they're trying to help sometimes, that they just completely misfire in their attempts to connect with minority students, not even just like the black students here.
Okay. Can you describe some of the efforts of the Black Heritage Committee, right?
Yeah.
Describe some of you guys' efforts to promote or, merge cultures here at GW, like some of the events you guys put on. I know you guys just talked about it in your meetings. So
Yeah.
Can you just go into that?
A big thing that we try and always do is make sure we're communicating with other minority organizations such as the LGBT Resource Center or OLAS, which is the Organization of Latino American Students. In the past, we've tried to do programs with Hillel and like the Jewish Association and things like that, which typically work every now and then, but sometimes our schedules are just so busy they don't work. So across like fellow minority or like religious groups, the communication is pretty open and consistent. When you start trying to work with outside groups that are mostly in mainstream GW, that's where a lot of the disconnect happens, and usually they don't really happen just because it fails so much. I feel like this culture here, there's no point in really trying most of the time.
And my last question is, why is it important for you to be a part of the BHC?
The BHC.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's very important to be of the BHC committee, which is under the BSU, just because I feel like on this campus, it's so essential to have some type of resource or a cornerstone for people to rally around. I think if there wasn't a BSU or any type of cultural hub for people, it would create a sense of isolation that people do feel all the time on this campus, I think, when they're in class. But things like the BSU and the Multicultural Service Center give people a place to rally around and really have people that look like them. I think it's often overlooked how important it is to learn and to socialize with people who look like you and have experiences more similar to you.
Cool. All right, thanks, Eric. Definitely leaned into you before. I can tell.
I should have gone first.
Who wants?
My name is Camille Meekins, Camille, last name Meekins. I'm a senior and I am the co-chair. No, I'm not, sorry. I'm the Public Relations and Marketing chair for BHC. And actually, I'm also the co-president of Black Women's Forum. Do you want me to talk about that too, or no? Or just BHC?
Yeah, you
Okay,
can
yeah,
talk
that's what I.
about that.
Okay.
Actually, I'll ask you about that. What's it called? Black Women's Forum.
Mhm.
That would have perspective.
Yeah, that's why I was like
You are. So do you just say just so I can clip it off. Say that you serve as the co-chair for the Black Women's Forum.
Okay. I also serve as the co-president of the Black Women's Forum.
Okay, cool. Okay, can you tell me about your experience as a student of color at GW?
So far, I would say that my experience has been pretty positive, but I can say that it's much different than what I previously experienced. I'm from Philadelphia, and I went to a predominantly white Quaker school from kindergarten to 12th grade. So coming to GW, I was pretty sure that I had a lot of experience around a predominantly white community, but I would say that GW has been different in that I feel that a lot of white people here don't necessarily have that much experience around Black people, so even though they may not go out of their way to be exclusive in ways, it sometimes has been that way.
Okay, can you talk about a little bit of your work with the Black Women's Forum?
Mm-hmm. So this is my third year on the e-board for Black Women's Forum. Last year I was the vice president, this year I'm the co-president, and pretty much the Black Women's Forum is an organization that fosters a sense of community for Black women on campus, whether that's through mentorship or just events during the school year.
From your own experiences, can you talk to some of the advantages and disadvantages of being a student of color here?
So I would say an advantage is that I've gained a sense of the real world in a way, because in the real world there are people that you'll have to deal with, whether it's in the workplace, that aren't always understanding of your perspective or where you come from. And then I would say a disadvantage is that sometimes I feel like I'm kind of tired of having to always explain myself, and luckily I have different organizations that help me feel more at home, but sometimes it's a struggle.
Can you describe some of the university's diversity efforts, if there are any, events in which multiple cultures can come together and be equally represented?
Right, so I would say the main place that I feel a lot of cultures can come together is the Multicultural Student Services Center. This houses all multicultural organizations as well as the LGBT community. So I feel like this is definitely a place that fosters a sense of community for diverse backgrounds and groups.
Okay, and my last question is, what are your thoughts on the administrative advocacy for minority groups like BHC, BSU, and Black Women's Forum?
I feel like there are people in high places that do advocate for different organizations, but I sometimes feel like the people in the more high up places can be kind of hard to break through. So I feel like we are represented, but in a certain sense, not as equally as other organizations on campus.
Okay. Thanks, Camille.
You're welcome.
First time.
Rambling.
Okay, could you tell me a little bit about your role with BHC?
My role with BHC is to be like an advisor. most times I will do a lot of the negotiations with, so if there's a keynote that's coming in, I'll do a lot of the groundwork in terms of negotiations with the keynote. I let the students and my graduate student normally do a lot of the logistics work in terms of, I definitely have a hand in how we vet which programs, we do a call for programs. I definitely have a hand in how we kind of vet the things that are relevant for the month. This year, as we were just in the meeting, we had over, I think they said 24 submissions, and there are a couple more that are coming. So we never like to exclude anybody, so we have a rubric. I normally, will recreate a rubric so people can understand why or why not they were selected. And so that, I'm just basically a person who helps to kind of dot all the I's and cross all the T's in terms of, I work together with one of my coworkers to do some of the event planning, some of the marketing, some of the communications, and so on and so forth. I help them kind of craft some of the language, but for the most part, I cut them loose. I don't micromanage the process. I'm almost at just about every meeting, but I can back that up now because actually, we just hired our new graduate student, so she's going to be able to take a lot of that off of me. But I'm standing in for her to do that. So that's pretty much been my role. Just kind of like, at times I tell them I'm on the committee, but my vote doesn't count unless you absolutely need me to break a tie. So if it's for choosing a speaker, if it's for a theme, if it's for color scheme for the collateral materials or whatever or what have you. But I always remind them, I always tell them, this is your BHC. These are your college days. These are the things that are most relevant to you. So, I was raised by Black revolutionaries. So I said, y'all are at a different age. So I don't know the Black experience at GW as a student. I know it as an administrator, but not as a student. So I always make sure that what we're presenting is relevant to their particular their particular challenges. Not just the challenges, but even some of the good things that happen. Because sometimes people think that BHC is just a time to voice all of the bad things wrong with what's going on here or in the world. But it's a time to kind of highlight some of the stuff that there is a Black experience here at GW. Because as you know, not at every PWI there's not necessarily a Black experience. And so we always tell them they have an opportunity to either continue tradition or recreate it. So this is kind of that opportunity. So I'm just kind of, I'll ask some of the hard questions, some of the rhetorical questions, whether it be about brand recognition, the relevance from the theme to the speaker, and how it resonates. Is it easy to market this? So I ask some of the tough questions sometimes. So.
Okay. Can you just explain to me your opinion on why you think it's important for students of color to be involved in organizations within the multicultural student services? I
think it's important because everybody needs a safe place, even if there is no danger, if you get what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. I think every student of color needs, they need that refuge, in the event that something happens that bothers them. But you know how good it feels to be in a place where people know you and they know your struggle and they know the challenges. They know what it means, for certain traditions. So I think it's important for them to understand that. I always challenge them. I always challenge them to be unapologetically Black. Like, this is your experience. You're adding to the GW experience. You're not. You don't have to assimilate. In other words, GW is going to take something from you, which is your money and your time. You might as well take something from them besides a degree. My thing is, leave your mark on this place in terms of, this is what Black people do. This is not all they do, but this is a part of what they do. So I try to kind of stress that to them. Leave your mark and do it with tact if you by all means. But let people know that, yeah, black folks' lives do matter here. Black brains matter. You know what I mean? So that's that's really always my sermon, I guess, that I'm preaching to them.
Okay. So. What do you think are some of the benefits for students to be a part of organizations like BHC?
It lets them know what they can do. It allows them to stretch themselves. Some people have never done PR. Some people have never done a press release. Some people have never really interfaced with people that they admire, if it be a TV personality or a journalist or an accomplished author or what have you. So it puts them in places where they can take the skills that they've already sharpened and put them to work. But at the same time, it does build community, and by virtue of them being involved, they kind of sound the trumpet for anybody else who wants to be involved in BHC for years to come. And so I always tell them, you all always have an opportunity to build a legacy every single year. And so you may meet somebody 10 years down the line and say, okay, I was part of the BHC committee. Well, I was too. Well, what year were you? Okay, well, so that therein lies a whole nother experience in terms of this is what we do here. And so I think, beyond just the skills, it's a great experience for them. Just to really, for once, even if it's just for the month, feel like what they do, what they say, and how they look matters, and that people appreciate what they do. So.
And my last question is, how do you think the BSU, BHC community is received by the general GW community?
Very carefully. And I say that because, as you see, some students come from all different backgrounds. But I think, I hope I'm answering your question.
Just in terms of administration, students, do you feel as if other students not of color are, make it a point to, try to understand the Black experience? Do they participate in the events well? How is the cultural immersion?
Some of them are very intentional, and if they are, it's because they're frequenters of this center. Those that aren't will find out sooner or later. Either they'll actually view it from a foreign person, they'll read about it, or they'll live vicariously through their Black friends or their friends who have Black friends. But I think in terms of them being respectful, I think they are, to the level that they're intentional about being involved. It's a little bit yet to be desired. But that's why we always say what we do is not exclusive to the Black community. I always tell the Black students here, when you guys, in other words, the Black experience is not just for Black students. I said, but people should know, even white people should know what the Black experience is. Like white people should know what the Latino experience is. Like Asian people should know, white people should know what the Asian experience is, and vice versa. Because it's easy to throw white students into one particular bucket. They don't all necessarily come from privilege. But then again, not all students that go to GW are necessarily privileged or non-privileged either. And so it strikes a balance. So I think GW students are respectful. I think if necessary, they'll ask the questions that when they really, really don't understand. Whether they're familiar with Black students or not. I think I found it to be that way, where they'll ask those questions. Well, hey, why do y'all do that? Well, what does this mean? Which is good, because it's not every day that they get a chance to actually ask some of the hard questions, I guess. So.
Thank you. You guys are a good group.
Well, thanks. No, the interviewer makes the interview.
So you're a
Rebecca Walcott, REBECCAWALCOTT.
Okay, and can you explain to me your position? This is the
Diversity and Inclusion Working Group, student government.
Okay.
Diversity and Inclusion Working Group.
Okay.
I'm the deputy director.
Deputy director. Okay. Can you briefly tell me about your experience at American as a student of color?
Well, firstly, I'm an international student. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, so it was a big jump coming here because I have no family in DC. So that was really difficult, and I guess AU considered me primarily an international student first. So I was put through international student orientation and put with a lot of those students. But being a person of color, I find it difficult sometimes because, well, what we're discussing here a lot is microaggression, and a lot of people here, they say things that they don't necessarily mean, but it can be very racially insensitive, and it makes you just frustrated sometimes because you're like, do they not realize like that's not okay? And yeah, that's been my experience.
Okay. In your opinion, do you feel like your university is where it needs to be in terms of cultural inclusion, development? And if not, tell me how you think the university could improve.
I don't think it's near what it should be like, but I definitely think that a lot of these students are extremely intelligent and have the power to make a change, and that's why I feel like being part of groups like these are like stepping us in the right direction, even though it's going slowly than I would like. It's important that we have like diversity and inclusion working groups, and we have the attention of faculty and the heads to know that like we're not okay with some of these issues, because a lot of times they look over some of the things that we say because they feel like they might have the better say overall for like the student community because we're the minority. But yeah, I think organizations like these are really good.
Okay. And why was it important for you, you said you were an international student, to join an organization like this?
Well, I really wanted to get more involved on campus, and the working groups, they're like different parts of it. So there's like the financial aid. The working group is students who are part of student government who want to, like, they want to basically get a voice from people like across the campus, not just in student government. So you have to apply for this position, and when I was looking through all the different things that I could apply for, I was like, what would be the best for me? And I was like, I really think that like I would have the most to give in this diversity and inclusion working group. So that's why, okay?
Yeah, okay.
I hope that was the question. I feel like that wasn't the question.
It was. Thank you,
Is
Rebecca.
that it? Okay,
Yeah.
My name is Wanjiko Wamba, Wanjiku, but everybody calls me Shiko. You want me to spell that name?
You can spell it for me.
Okay, Shiko.
Okay. Cool. Alrighty. Also, can you tell me your classification and your position on the C board?
I'm just a member. I don't have like any like specific role. What do you mean classification?
Like your junior, senior? Sophomore?
I'm a junior.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you briefly tell me about your experience as a student of color at American?
I would say starting off, like in terms of my whole time here, American, it was hard to find like other students of color. There wasn't like a place like to network, unless like you were heavily involved in like BSA or Black Student Association or ASO. I was in a special program, a 3-year program for my major. It's a scholars program, and there was no diversity there at all. And I'm not just talking about color, I'm just talking about people who are just different. We also shared a space with the honor students and stuff, very little diversity there. My whole building was just the same type of people, so I often found myself like branching out and going to our different buildings and meeting different people. I actually never became close, even though we lived together, and it was like a cohort setting. I never became really close with them. I ended up hanging out with people who were, I don't even know how I met them, but people who just like probably didn't even go to American. Someone to Howard or someone to GW or something like that. But AU is small and it has its benefits, but in terms of diversity, it kind of makes it hard. We're small, our voice is not really heard as much as like we try to make it and put it out there as much. I haven't really experienced face-to-face like racism and stuff, but I know like things like our Yik Yak comments that are posted and stuff like that really bothers me, that people can go around feeling such a way. I don't know if you've seen them or not. Yeah, like imagine how you would feel, you know, just being here. I mean, and no one will say this to your face, of course, but like you don't know who said this, you
just
know?
to know that they think it.
Yeah, you know, and it's remarkable, and you can only imagine then again how professors feel. Not just that, but even like when you go out at parties and things like that, like you can't help but notice that I'm the only Black female here, you know, or there is no other like Black men here. It's just, you know, you can't help but notice no matter like where you are. But once you find your circle as a junior, like I've been able to find my niche, my people, how to work DC, how to work AU, and I've found a comfortable place, and I just hope that the people underneath me were able to find that too.
Have you faced any challenges as a student of color here? Could be general, like you guys as an organization, personal, anything that you felt was, you know, like directly linked to being a person of color, whether it's funding for your organization, anything along those lines?
I have to say a big thing is like a respect issue. I feel like for anyone to respect me in general, like I have to come with all sorts of credentials, or I have to come with, you know, a group of like other white students or something like that. There definitely is like a respect issue. Another thing is like I don't know if it's me being sensitive. You know, you can always say, oh, I'm being treated differently because I'm black, or maybe other people, you know, are also treated that way. I don't know, but anytime I feel like I'm at a disadvantage, the first thing I go to is it's probably because I'm black, or maybe a woman, but most likely because I'm black, you know. But that too, it's just, for me, it's more like of a mental thing that I keep in the back of my head, being at a PWI, because and then you don't know whether to address it because you don't want to be like the angry black girl, you know, even though I'm like the furthest thing, but you don't really know how to address it, especially when it comes to professors, you know, because you want their respect and you want to like, you know, like earn it, but sometimes I'm just kind of like, I'm pretty sure like you would have done that if I was white, or just in general, but yeah.
Okay. What do you think are some steps that AU could take in terms of, to better diversity and inclusion on campus?
I think they really do need to start from like professors, because those are the kind of ones who like influence us into our futures in general, you know, into like our majors or our minors or whatever, but definitely professors. Also like students, new incoming students. There's so many students here who've like never seen black people, like, and I'm talking about like honor students, scholar students like myself, who like don't really know like how to converse with us, and we're also very much a political, like active school and stuff like that. So it's also like race and politics kind of also play, you know, socioeconomic status. So it's just, I feel like also students who are coming in should be educated on how to deal with these issues, things that I think that you shouldn't ask other, you know, black students, or some things that know what's inappropriate to say and what's appropriate to say, and things you just keep to yourself and things I keep to myself. But I definitely think like professors need to be addressed, and I think that incoming students should also be addressed to make it more welcoming for everybody.
Cool. Okay, and my last question is, can you like describe the strength of the administrative advocacy for minority organizations, specifically yours? Do you believe like they're equally as supportive? Do you think, you know, they give you guys like a harder time to do things? Could you just like touch a little bit on that?
Honestly, I feel as though, I don't know if this is a coincidence, but you can't help but notice that I feel like it's been, every professor I've met with has been black regarding diversity and inclusion. We don't have any Latino professors. I don't know any Latino ones, but all the ones I have met with or seen or who have referenced our problem with diversity or inclusion have been black. So I think that it shouldn't just be black ones. I think it should be all the professors should be able to acknowledge this problem. Maybe those are the only ones who feel comfortable enough to tell me about it. But yeah, what was the question again?
The strength of administrative advocacy. So you were touching on it.
Yeah, but I think it's weak. I feel like we have support because they want their students to be active and vocal and, you know, be a part of the campus. But I also feel a lot of the times like if they also kind of quiet us, like definitely from like the top administrative, like they definitely try to quiet our voice, and they definitely try to like beat around the bush when we ask them very simple questions. As you've seen in our meeting, like, you know, the problems that we have to deal with. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, I really appreciate it.
Lauren, Lauren, Lumpkin, Lumpkin.
Okay, Lauren. Can you tell me about, do you hold a specific title in this organization?
No, I'm just a member.
Okay. Can you briefly tell me about your experience as a student of color at a PWI, at the American?
Well, I went to PWI for high school and middle school, so I kind of came knowing what to expect. I've heard a lot of stories from people who really had a difficult time transitioning from their high school to a PWI, and I think I was kind of lucky to get that experience out the way when I was a lot younger, so I kind of knew what to expect, and now I think I kind of know how to address, things like microaggressions. That's like the most common thing that I experience. Just hearing people say things that, probably the things that aren't hateful, but, obviously things that you shouldn't say. And just, I think I've kind of come up with a way to like, check people on it, but in a nice way, not to come off as, whatever. But I think I just kind of know what to expect. And the only thing that I kind of, experience are the microaggressions. And also I think that it's good that we have groups like this on campus to foster a climate of inclusivity. And I like that we're trying to add a more diverse selection of courses. And I think that's like my biggest thing, because I think that's really important, and that'll help students feel more involved, more included in the community, and also will teach others, students about different cultures and races.
Okay. Can you describe the university's diversity? Like, do you feel that all cultures are properly represented on campus?
I think they are. I just think that I think American is pretty diverse compared to what I'm used to. The only group who I haven't really seen are Native Americans, but I think in terms of I'm from Cleveland, and there's not a big African population in Cleveland. So when I came here, I met a lot of African students and even Latino and Latina students. So I think obviously we could improve. I think that the school kind of prides itself on diversity, but if you look around the campus, it's you kind of have to look for it. But I think it's a positive change from what I come from originally.
Okay. Why was it important for you to be a part of this organization?
I think the thing that really motivated me to kind of apply for this group were the Yik Yak comments that kind of surfaced, I think, last semester. That's at least when I saw it last semester, or maybe the end of the first semester. And I mean, it just really made me angry and uncomfortable just to be on campus, knowing that I could be in class, or I could live next to somebody who is posting this type of stuff on social media. So that was kind of the last, aside from little things that I've noticed, that was just the thing that was really okay, I really want to be part of some change, and this needs to change. And students don't deserve to come to school, go to class, and just feel uncomfortable, which is the way I was feeling. So that was the single incident that motivated me to make a change. And then this group was formed at the beginning of this year. So I was like, this is the perfect opportunity for me to speak up and get my voice heard and work for other students on campus.
Okay. And actually, Shigo mentioned the Yik Yak comment. So do you think you could touch on those just briefly? What were the type of things that would be said on Yik Yak? You don't have to go too explicit, but just so I can get an idea of,
Yeah. Just honestly, just terrible things like, I remember after the, was it the Michael Brown? That's sad that you can't even remember which ones, there's so many, but I think the Darkening did a protest for, I think it was Michael Brown, and so they did kind of everyone sat in front of, I guess it's our student center, and people laid down on the steps and stuff like that, and someone called it a minstrel show on Yik Yak. People, it was another one, something said someone called it a slave auction. I mean, just things that why would you say that? You know what I mean? Just ridiculous things. And so I just think that things like that need to be addressed. You know what I mean? Just stuff that's just the type of stuff I won't stand for. You know what I mean? Microaggressions are one thing, but explicit racism, I'm not gonna deal with that at all. Okay. Not at a school that I go to and I pay to go to, and I really like this school, and so I think it sucks that I go to school with people who feel that way, who think that's okay.
Alrighty, so we won't get kicked out. So, Aliyah, can you briefly tell me about your experience as a student of color at American?
So my experience at AU as a student of color has had its ups and downs, I guess. In a sense, I have so I come from a very diverse high school. You get everything Latino, white, black, whatever, and even the Caribbean aspect of the African diaspora. Not too much actual people from different countries in Africa, but still pretty diverse. So coming to school here, it was different at first because I guess in a sense, I didn't want people, like I already came into the school like with that mindset of making sure that people didn't view me as like the sassy black girl, or like the black girl like all she does is like play trap music and twerk, like that like aspect. And I guess even so, like I still was kind of given that label. And with some people, like some people on my floor, like I ran into them and they very accepting, very like they want to know more. Like I know one of my best friends here, like I'm her first black friend, but it's not in the sense where it's like, oh my goodness type thing. It's more so like, can I learn about like your culture? And then there are some people who just like disregard it all, and they're more so like football is more important than anything that's happening in your community. So like I've had like my ups and downs overall. It hasn't been as bad as like other people who I've spoken to and like the blatant like racism that they've gone through here, but like me, it's just like kind of like some days I deal with some like prejudice stuff, other days like it's just like pretty good. So
Okay. Can you tell me what you think are some of the advantages and disadvantages of being a student of color at a PWI?
I would say an advantage is it preps you for some things that you may face in the business world, because corporate America is more like a white America. So like there are things that you're going to run into. Like I know even being in high school and like the type of student I was, like I know like people looked at me as the token, but in a sense I took that like more so pride, and like coming to American I like realized that being the token isn't necessarily like a good title. And like it's like now I know how to handle certain things, certain like microaggressions when people speak to me in a certain way, you know, when to call, like when to like kind of call out when someone is kind of like blowing smoke or like, you know, just saying like rude things, because sometimes you don't always catch it when it's like that environment that you're always in. But now like being here, it's like you're kind of taught to like catch these things, and you're taught like how to kind of deal with them, even though it's not like by a professor. It's kind of just like on your own merit, but it's just still like you learn how to deal with them. You learn how to remain calm in certain situations and not like get heated automatically and like just go off, which can like ruin things in the future. So that's like an advantage. A disadvantage is just that like I feel like because there's just like a small selection of like students of color on campus, that sometimes sometimes the campus lacks a community. So like because everyone is so clicked up, or if like a black student or, you know, just a student of color joins a white frat, they feel like they're separated from like the black community. And so it's just like things like that where because there's such a small number, I feel like we should be more unified. It's just like not. So that's like probably another like just disadvantage.
Do you think your university is where, do you feel your university is where it needs to be in terms of cultural inclusion? And if not, what are some things you think they can do to move in that direction?
I believe I believe American, like they feel as though they're kind of like inclusive with that, and that they're, you know, always welcoming everything. But I believe like kind of at the end of the day, they're not. They pick and choose which issues they want to be passionate about. Our school prides itself on being a liberal campus, and like I said, they just pick and choose when they want to be liberal. I feel like enhancing it based off of like things that we talk about like in my working group, like about diversifying like our course load, making sure that we have like trainings that everyone goes through, making sure that we take the time to like acknowledge everyone's like thought, like point of view, where they're coming from. Like in our in our gen ed breakdown, it's more so like Western like philosophy type classes that, you know, are offered, whereas like there are so many different aspects that we can be included in the conversation. So I think it's about getting every voice heard in the classroom setting,